Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this coffee break webinar. Sorry, I'm just drinking water. Coffee break webinar series from Squared Up. My name is Matthew Long, and this month we're going to be talking about what's coming in 2018. I am joined, as always, by our product architect and founder, Richard Benwell.
Hi, Matthew. Hi, everyone.
And yeah, this week we're sort of taking a look back at what we've been up to so far in 2018, but then also we're only halfway through the year. What are our sort of goals still to accomplish? So we're very busy here at Squared Up, got lots going on both in and out of the product. So this month we're just taking a bit of a whirlwind tour of that and sort of whetting your appetite of stuff that we're still going to work on, making some big promises to deliver on. So we're going to look at the product first of all. So what's happening in the next major feature release of Squared Up, a bit of another sneak peek following on from last month of some of the new functionality there. Then we'll take a look at our Windows Admin Center extension, which for those of you who maybe aren't keeping up with WAC, formerly Honolulu, talk a bit about that as well. And then talking about some of the sort of outside of SCOM and Squared Up projects that we've been up to, including some community efforts and also some events that we've been to and also that we're planning on attending soon. So quite a few different things to talk about today. Okay, I'm going to kick it off first of all with a demo because everyone loves demos. So what I'm about to show you now is a sneak peek of some functionality that's available in our next sort of vNext version of Squared Up. So not a maintenance release, a feature release. And because this is not final level code, things probably are going to go wrong. So things are subject to change. If you're looking at this in 2019 in the future, hello, this probably might not be what it looks like in the future. So just keep that in mind. So what I'm going to show you is our new matrix tile. So in V3, we had a tile called the dynamic table tile. And the idea basically was that it would, given a scope like a group of servers or some databases, it would try and give you a immediate and intelligent layout. So rather than just saying, here's a list of objects, it would say, well, here's performance counters that make sense for these objects. Here's property values visualized nicely that make sense for these objects. But what we heard sort of repeatedly was that that's great, but actually I need to customize this. I'm not looking at a one size fits all solution, and you don't have support for every single object available in SCOM. So the big piece there was the dynamic table just wasn't customizable enough. The matrix tile is an evolution of the dynamic table into a fully customizable grid layout, which is basically a fancy way of saying that it takes the same technology that dynamic table did, so the idea of having these sort of what we call row perspectives internally, that say, hey, you got some servers here, well, let's put in a CPU, a memory health column, some performance graphs, let's give you the current health state, give you that as a starting point, but then allow you to actually customize that by modifying that template. So here's a base that's sensible. If that's good for your needs, great, keep it. Nice and easy to configure. If not, now you can add or remove columns, change their display settings, reorder them, all that kind of stuff that you've always wanted to be able to do with Dynamic Table. And it allows you to create some really, really powerful looking high impact dashboards. And we've even added some extra visualizations to that to enhance what was previously capable of doing. Because basically the old Dynamic Table, it could do like status, a couple of performance graphs. And it had some visualizations that were like cute, but not necessarily terribly useful, like the signal strength one that showed the number of CPUs. Like, look, we can show 4 blocks rather than putting the number 4. Not great. This actually enables us to now put really useful widgets on that screen. So health state history, so what's the object been doing for the past 12 hours, not just what's its current health state. Some direct monitor block tiles, so a very high impact way of saying, look, these are the 4 monitors that you really care about on this object. Let's get rid of the rest of the noise and just show those aligned for every object in your scope. And then finally SLA, so I'm actually meeting my SLA for each of these individual objects. So it's very compact as opposed to having like a status tile, an SLA tile, a performance tile, and everything else all over the screen.
This has often also been an area of SCOM in general that has meant there's never quite been as simple to engage with as some of the other monitoring tools out there. So for a server, for example, you just want to know CPU, memory, disk, right? Red, green, and some metrics, whereas SCOM gives you this super complex object model for every server, and then just this one high-level health state. The same with applications. Are they currently available, not available, and so on. And I think this is really trying to narrow that gap. So SCOM has always had the data there. It's just always been sort of quite hard to surface in that sort of simplest of forms. And really, the matrix tile should take us a big step towards that. So you present the data in a way that just gives your users exactly the data they need at a glance.
Yep. So they should it should be ideally foolproof to configure for them. Like at first, they get something sensible. They have to know SCOM to understand that, and then you as a SCOM admin can really go in and tweak that if you want to. So I have 2 demos I'm going to show here quickly with this. The first is sort of configuring a service sort of overview. So given an app, here's all its servers. Let's make a nice compact overview dashboard for that. And then I'll show off the sort of more business-focused dashboard after that sort of is aimed at saying, these are all my apps, and these are their current statuses and a breakdown of that as well. So here we go into the product. I've made my sacrifices to the demo gods this morning, so hopefully it won't blow up. So this is the preview. This is a effectively dynamic table. This is the default sort of option. So if you've ever taken a group of Windows servers, put them in the dynamic table tile, this is what you get out. And the number one sort of thing with this we had was either, hey, I love the fact that you got the host column there showing us which hypervisor it's on, or it was, why is this host column blank all the time? And these are Azure servers anyway, so these GUIDs are absolutely meaningless to me. I don't want that column there. I want something else instead. So this is a prime candidate for being able to customize it now using the matrix tile capabilities. So I'm just going to go and create a new dashboard just to show you this from the word go. So matrix tile. I'm just going to actually put a single server in here for the moment, just to demonstrate another quick feature with this. It's an improvement on the dynamic table tile. So if I pick a particular server like that, obviously, if I pick a group, I get all the servers in the group. Here's my sort of default view. I've got two size modes. The default size mode, great for screens, or large, which is great for wall dashboards. So really like takes all the white space away. Put it on a big wall monitor, it looks great. And then this is where basically it gets amazing. So columns. If I had dynamic table before, this is where it stopped. I couldn't customize or change it. Now, the default is this sort of dynamic columns where it says, okay, I can tell that this object or objects is it's a Windows server. It's also a SQL server as well. And I'm going to use these sort of default templates that come out of the box, or if you have a dashboard pack that implements them, it comes with those as well. If I want to, I can flip between them. So this selector allows you to get around the problem you may have had with the V3 one where it decided to show you the SQL server list, but not one of the servers wasn't a SQL server, so it had loads of blank columns. So now you can pick the most appropriate base. So in this case, Windows Server, because I'm going to add some more servers in a minute, and not all of them are SQL servers. And then if I hit custom, wham, what we actually get now is the JSON behind powering these columns. Now, for the next major feature release, we're not going to have a UI editor here. That's a very complex piece to build, and frankly, we wanted to get this out into people's hands straight away. It's actually very easy to add this stuff, and there's full documentation, or there will be full documentation for how to add these. But the important point basically is, what's the title of the column? What type of column do you want to show here? And a lot of the time it's just a performance counter or text. It's pretty damn easy to do that. And then the configuration options, if any, for what that column should look like. So as an example, if you want to show the performance line for CPU usage, this SCOM performance as Spark line, I need to know the object and counter name you want. And then I want to know how you want to display the actual value on the end here. So in this case, round the value up. I'm not too interested, particularly if it's I don't want you to have 4 decimal places on that, and put a percentage on the end because this is a percentage counter. So it's pretty easy to actually do that. And certainly once you've got some examples like you have here now, you can copy and paste that. I could pretty easily copy this column, call it network bandwidth or disk space, whatever, and change the objects and counters as appropriate. Now what I'm going to do is the classic example here, this host column, not very meaningful to us in our environment. So I'm going to grab some JSON from over here. I'm actually going to reconfigure.
And just to check, Matthew, so the host shows the virtualization host, right? So the VMware or the Hyper-V host using the information available from, is it just the Windows Server Management Pack?
Yeah, it
collects that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But it's a bit limited. It only works on Hyper-V by default. And in this case, this is an Azure VM. So that's Azure's Hyper-V host. Yeah. Completely meaningless to us.
You'll never see that name anywhere else.
No, exactly. RD7. Like, this is clearly a box that no human ever manages, right? So yeah, it's completely meaningless to our environment. And obviously if you're a VMware shop, again, it's blank all the way down. So let's replace that with a column that's a bit more useful. So what I'm going to do is, I've got some JSON over here because I am not an accurate typer, and watching someone else type JSON is akin to torture. This column I'm going to add is our new health state history block column. There you go. Basically, that's the last 12 hours. So as you can see here, this currently is red, and it's been red for 12 hours, probably a bit longer than that in our environment. But it's a great way of visualizing, okay, has this thing just turned healthy or unhealthy? Has it been like warning for a while and now gone unhealthy? And that's just easy to configure. That's actually just what monitor do you want us to query here and roll up and calculate the health for. That particular GUID happens to be the top level roll up for the subject. And I can get that. The way I got this GUID, by the way, I wasn't psychic. I got that by just configuring the tile. going into the JSON for that tile and copying the config. And that's the beauty of all of these columns, is they actually borrow stuff from our existing tiles. So if you ever want to go, oh, I don't know how to configure the column for a performance graph, just add a performance graph tile to the dashboard, configure it the way you want it, and then click the JSON button and you'll see the same configuration options and you can copy and paste them. So hopefully that's pretty cool. I'm just going to hit, excuse me, I'm going to go up here and change this scope to a group and pop in my sales app servers. Keeps the same configuration between all of them. There you go. And now I've got a nice dashboard here. As I said previously, it may have selected SQL Server as your perspective, so that all the columns be blank apart from the SQL servers, but I chose Windows Server as my base. So now it's very easy for me to configure a dashboard that shows me relevant information for me across the whole of this group, single server or entire class. So that's hopefully pretty cool. That's the servers example. I'm not going to show you how I built this, but I want to just show you how far you can take this if you want to. This is a dashboard that I created earlier using a dynamic table that shows off our application health in our entire environment. So here's all our major apps. Here's our sales app. Here's an SLA for that app. Here's what it's been doing across the last 12 hours. These columns here break down to what are its availability tests, what's the components in my app, what's the infrastructure my app's running on, and the health. So I can see immediately looking at this, okay, my sales app is red. There is an issue on the infrastructure here that is impacting the end user availability of this app, and it's been going on in this case for the last 5 hours. So that's a sort of great dashboard you can now give to the business and say, look, here's our services and here's what they're currently doing.
And combining lots of tiles we recognize and can be used as standalone tiles, so an SLA tile, the status block tile, and so on, but putting those all into just one sort of giant table or matrix for each of those applications. Great. So not just servers, but any objects.
Anything you like, yeah. There's a lot of different uses of this, so it's definitely one worth playing around with once this comes out. So look forward to this in the future. It's not my job to predict when that will be, so I'm going to keep quiet on that one. But yeah, it's coming up sort of hopefully this year, so that's something you should definitely get to play around with soon. Okay, so that's the product. The next thing I wanted to show off was something you can get your hands on today, which is the Windows Admin Center extension. For those of you sort of following on Microsoft's coverage of this, they have Project Honolulu, which is a sort of new management tool for Windows servers. It is I say standalone product, really. It doesn't rely on sort of enterprise licensing or anything else. It's effectively a front end that you install either on your workstation or as a sort of jump box that everyone else logs into. And then from a web-based, and I mean properly web-based, from a web browser, you can manage a whole bunch of Windows systems and failover clusters, literally from your web browser. And you've got access to performance information, events, you've got access to run tasks and remediate things. You can run PowerShell in browser. You can RDP onto the thing in browser. Like, you really can use that as a full management experience. What they've also announced pretty recently, this is a build, wasn't it? Is the ability for partners and vendors to integrate into Honolulu as well. And we, being the forward-thinking chaps that we are, have created an extension that's in beta that integrates data from Squared Up into Windows Admin Center. So the idea here is that basically when you go into, I'll show you a screenshot in a second, when you go into a server or failover cluster in WAC, you get a tab there that says Squared Up along with your performance and all the other different tabs across the whole of the management suite there for Honolulu. Clicking on that then takes you to that object inside Squared Up. So you get the perspectives ribbon. And now you can use all of the Squared Up features you'd expect to be able to look at different perspectives in that object, drill down into different performance counters and graphs. And really what this enables you to do is enrich your sort of WAC deployment with information that typically isn't available from Windows Admin Center, because its philosophy is on-demand management. Like, when you view a server, it'll reach out, grab all the event logs, grab all the performance information and show that to you. It looks really slick, but it completely lacks historical data. That's where SCOM comes in, basically. So this enables you to basically put those two together and say, look, I can get timely, immediate information, which SCOM isn't always great at, alongside that historic information. And because Squared Up can reach out into lots of different products, you can also use that as a way of servicing, like, help desk ticket information here directly, or change information here directly, or if you're doing hybrid monitoring, so you've got other products also monitoring as well, bring those in via Squared Up connectors. So you really now can give users sort of a single tool, or if they're already used to using these tools, when they have to go into WAC, it's not so unfamiliar because they can now get that information from Squared Up as well. It currently is in beta. It's available from within the Windows Windows Admin Center. No need to come to us for that. You can go into the extension feed there, click a button, and it installs. You do have to be a Squared Up customer to be able to leverage this, obviously, because it's going to ask you, okay, where's your Squared Up server? And basically all it does is it embeds Squared Up inside the page.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of a configuration, but once you're done, you're basically good to go. We have a webinar upcoming about this. If you want to learn more and sort of see full-on guides and everything else, do check out that link on the screen there, squareup.com/whack, and you can register for that.
So, I mean, really, Windows Admin Center is the future of Windows Server administration. It's safe to say. There's a screenshot there. So on the left-hand side, you see everything that Matthew's kind of covered in terms of replacement of existing control panel or MMC-based tools into a single web administration experience for Windows Server. It's definitely the future. I think it's been a sort of soft release so far.
Yeah.
So it's been available as a TP. It's now GA, but still as a standalone tool. So I think sort of adoption now is ramping up, but as people just sort of become aware of it, I think this is going to go really big with Windows Server 2019. So it will be the default administration tool for 2019, and you'll be very much encouraged to install just the stripped down version of Windows, right, and have this as your administration tool on top of it. So I think although this is available right now to download and use to administer many versions of Windows all the way back to 2012, I think. Was it 2012?
Yeah, because it uses PowerShell for all of its management, basically. Yeah. So I think it wants that because that's the first version that's shipped with it.
So it is available. There is adoption, but I think come Ignite in September this year and the release of Windows Server 2019, I think you'll be hearing a lot more about Windows Admin Center. And yeah, we're sort of at the forefront of this, making sure that if your users starting to use this as a day-to-day tool to administer Windows servers, you have access to Squared Up right there. So for things like maintenance mode, that's really useful. So you're about to run some PowerShell or make some registry changes, put it into maintenance mode before you do that. Yep. And of course, as Matthew says, all the historical data as well. We are also looking at switching the integration the other way around, so that if your users are using Squared Up day to day, which hopefully they are in response to alerts, or they're just going to go there first to sort of understand the health and performance of a server, you can actually then embed the Honolulu information or access to the OS essentially within Squared Up. So we're looking at that. It's not possible right now, but we would like that integration to work both ways. It'd be great to hear if anyone's really sort of actively getting hands-on with Honolulu, Windows Admin Center. So drop us a line in the chat now, or sort of follow up separately if this is something that is a big project currently underway in your organization, or you're seeing your users sort of start to adopt this. Right now, I think, as I say, it's kind of quite sort of a lot of interest, but quite slow adoption. And you know what it's like. It's really hard to switch to the tools that you've used for the last 10 years to a brand new tool. Yep. So who's not going to RDP on and fire up regedit, right, rather than actually go to Honolulu and switch over to the registry tab. So we're very interested to hear sort of really what the true adoption of this is over the next year. I think they should have put the remote desktop feature at the top, because that's the way you sell this, right? It's like, look, you can use RDP, but it takes less clicks to do it. Yeah. So they should have done that. Yeah, definitely let us know if you're using this, and if not, check it out. Like I said, WAC's free, so you might as well have a fiddle with it, and you can install it on your desktop if you want to, if you're worried about change control, pooing the idea of standing a new server up. Okay, cool. So that's our Windows Admin Center. Hopefully that's useful to some of you, or if not, that's giving you a sort of cool thing to go and research after the webinar is complete. The next thing to look at now is sort of a community project that we are working on internally, but we haven't got this available for you guys just yet. But this is something to maybe think of as we're going into the sort of next few quarters, and maybe let us know if you're interested in taking part. So what we want to do is solve one of the big challenges with SCOM, which is that for many people, it's just too noisy. It is seen quite commonly as being a spam machine. I think we did a joke, didn't we, all the way back in our second coffee break a while ago, of how for most people, SCOM is that thing that emails them and fills up a junk folder in their inbox called SCOM. And it has 50,000 unread emails in there. Part of that obviously is sort of organizational maturity, but part of it is down to the fact that if you just import all the management packs into SCOM and turn everything on, it is just way too noisy. And when an alert storm happens, you really are struggling to actually get to the root cause of any particular issue. And I think nothing undermines confidence in SCOM more than when someone says, oh, we found the cause of the problem 3 days later. SCOM didn't help us find that. That's really hard to come back from that. So
what you want to do to address that is we had a piece of feedback basically from a customer a little while ago about how a well-tuned SCOM environment is kind of the key to making the whole project work. But they felt like they were probably making the same choices with respect to tuning that everyone else was also making as well. And if you think about it, all these SCOM operators everywhere are making the same decision, which is, oh, this alert's too noisy, this alert's a good one to have, that kind of thing. And it's just taking up too much time. What if we could crowdsource this? What if we could actually get a sort of community-driven best practice for this is what we consider a sort of lightweight version of the management pack, or this is what we consider in-depth monitoring, where it's got all the key things you really need on. Can't we agree on those, crowdsource them, and then it should be really easy to apply those to my environment, either as a new customer or someone standing up a new environment, maybe in a data center, or just into my very different SCOM management groups. So the idea is we are looking at some kind of tool to allow you to get sort of the community wisdom on what MP tuning should actually look like, and then also make it easy for you to tune your environments or groups based on either those sort of sets, override sets, or your own. So if you take all this time to go in your test environment, go and tune with your application team, okay, this is what SQL Server should look like, this is the alerts they're happy with. It should not be a complete pain to then move that into your production group. Or when a new application comes online, you shouldn't have to go and reapply all these overrides all over again and chase them down for this new app, so that every single time a new app's onboarded, you have to go through this sort of 2-week process of getting all these annoying alerts over and over again. So that's really what the tool sort of is aimed at doing. So the idea there sort of on the side is you'd be able to say, for this particular group or server or whatever, for this one I want to have a balanced, give me sort of a reasonable set of alerts, the things I should get out of bed for. Don't give me the things that are just noise that no one cares about, or actually this is a T1, I want to put some full. For this one server, I want every single alert in the environment. So that's kind of what the whole thing is aimed at. This is not available right now. We're still sort of working on this internally. But if you are someone who is very into tuning your alerts, if you are someone who wants to help with this project, either from a testing perspective or with actually, providing these sort of override sets and being involved in that, please get in touch. Because the whole point of this is that like one organization or one group can't necessarily make this scale. We want this to be something that, the whole SCOM community takes part in and really helps drive this. So our collective wisdom is definitely stronger than just a couple of sort of individuals or even ours here at sort of Squared Up. So please get in touch if you're interested. Just as sort of another talk through just what this might look like. Right now, what we basically have is some PowerShell scripts. What they do is they allow you to take from SCOM all the monitoring configuration that you could apply to a given object or group or a management pack and dump that into a CSV. So actually ignore everything else we've just said. When you have to go to those meetings where you say, okay, these are the things that SCOM is monitoring for your application, you can now actually go into that meeting armed with information rather than the classic thing of, say the network team come in, they have their tools, they're very wary of SCOM anyway, they say what does SCOM monitor, and you're like, I guess we'll go to the authoring pane and start clicking around. No, here's a list that tells you everything that's there. It exports the configuration so you can start going through this and say, okay, I want to turn these off. And you can add columns in to say, actually, this is our essential stat, or this is our gold tier apps or whatever. For these gold tier, I want these things turned on, these things turned off, these things thresholds adjusted. And then what you can do then is from the second commandlet to import that CSV set into an environment, but crucially with an override scope. So you can say for this group or for this particular management pack or whatever, I want to set this override set. So an example here is for all our SQL servers, apply the standard group. And then you could run it again and say, okay, but for this one server, give it a different set. Or for these ones in this particular environment, there are test servers. People are always doing things and it's not putting it into maintenance mode. Let's just turn everything off so it's just discovery only. No alerts, but we can see all the objects available inside SCOM. Obviously, phase 2 of this long term is to create some kind of UI for this. This is, again, where we kind of want to know, where would you want this living? What would that look like? What would your use cases be? So again, please get in touch and give us some feedback on this and tell us if you're interested in what you'd like to see from this. Your feedback's pretty key on this one. Cool. So hopefully that's something exciting. Now going from stuff that we're working on to back to something we've actually done and you can see the fruits of already. We did a webinar a little while ago in association with Silect. So Silect run a event every year called MP University, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And the idea basically is it's to help you go from that step of, okay, SCOM's installed, we've tuned it, what now? How do I get it to start monitoring all my custom in-house apps and really take the monitoring from sort of the out-of-the-box experience to a really sort of tuned and in-depth tool. And the way that you do that largely is that you create management packs. So it's a day of learning all around SCOM and now Azure, aimed at that sort of custom monitoring and advanced scenarios. So we talked about MP authoring and tuning and log analytics. So we were not the only guests on there. Various different partners and other community members come in and do stuff, including people like Kevin Holman. So it's definitely worth going and checking that out. It's all free and available from the Select site. So the recordings are now available. Let me find my browser. There we go. So you can go here and check that out. And our session is here. So if you'd like to hear me talk even more, you can go and look at that session on demand. Interestingly, I wanted to sort of note how it starts out with SCOM, but then it starts to move into Azure Log Analytics and sort of the Azure management story. So again, you can see here that Microsoft sort of focus here now is more on the hybrid cloud scenario. So I think they've kind of realized that people aren't just going to jump all the way. So let's actually take you from your current environment with SCOM and kind of start bringing you in. So worth going and watching those two sessions to understand sort of what Microsoft's working on right now and how that affects your sort of current monitoring and security appliance. But also wanted to plug here our sort of hybrid cloud initiatives that we're looking at this year because we really do want to hear about your sort of hybrid cloud experiences. So where are you in your migrations? Are you doing one at all? Are you on-prem? Is your strategy going to be we have some stuff in the cloud and that's its own expansion and nothing to do with our on-prem apps? Or are you really blending the two and moving resources in your data center up to the cloud? The two are talking together, communicating as one unit. So please let us know where you are with that. We do actually have a survey. There's a link at the end of this coffee break webinar. So please take that if you haven't yet done so already. But we want to address this because I think this is clearly, the industry is borne out. This is the way things are going, right? So we want to make sure that your monitoring tooling sort of adapts with this change and you aren't being asked to throw out all your tooling or spend huge amounts of money on some sexy new APM tool to be able to monitor your whole estate. So, sorry, Richard.
Well, I was going to say, it's certainly more of a competitive landscape than before. I think, before it's like you go with Microsoft and you just stick with, their tooling, but log analytics is a great solution. But I think within organizations, what we're seeing is pressure from other groups within the IT organization. So as a monitoring team, it's not just saying, oh, well, we've got SCOM and now we're moving up to these sort of Azure monitoring tools, or sort of we're sticking with Microsoft first of all, because Microsoft are not kind of giving you that transition path, but also other now teams are perhaps driving the requirements a bit harder, either because they are developing on Azure AWS and starting to consume the built-in monitoring there, or they're looking at APM tools or sort of other tools specific to their needs. So the path is less clear, I think, for organizations as they're looking forward to the next sort of 5 years or so. Certainly from our point of view, we integrate with log analytics, but we also integrate with Splunk and other logging tools. We integrate with Azure and we have some Azure MPs as well as AWS and sort of other tools. So we're seeing, what is quite nice, we're seeing a lot of uptake on community answers around now integrating other data sources into Squared Up, which is great to see. And some of it's log analytics, but a lot of it, is other tools that organizations are facing and wanting to put into Squared Up. So that's still our position on this, which is really that sort of nice, stable platform of SCOM, but starting to adopt both infrastructure as a service, VMs up in Azure and AWS, but also that other monitoring solutions that you have around SCOM.
Speaking of other data sources, the sort of last thing I wanted to talk about was some of the events that we've been to and going to. So I think probably one of the number one of the things we get asked to integrate Squared Up with is ITSM tools, and probably the biggest one of those is ServiceNow. So we've been, well, I say we, Richard's been to Knowledge, a lovely trip to Las Vegas for you there. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Knowledge 18 is ServiceNow's annual conference. I think they've actually just changed their logo. So that sort of power sign has now been sort of flipped to some other logo. But that's ServiceNow's main annual conference out in Vegas. So we were out there exhibiting and talking about our solutions in the context of ServiceNow. So primarily looking at the challenge of service mapping. So mapping out those applications across your infrastructure, which you'll all know as VADA within SCOM. But there's a lot of interest from the ServiceNow audience in that. We are looking at that very kind of closely and sort of developing those solutions. But we are aware that in many organizations there is this trend now towards ITSM tools in general, mostly ServiceNow, some obviously sort of Service Manager and BMC Remedy and others. So it's not just sort of isolated to ServiceNow, but this general trend towards a huge focus on ITSM, and a real key part of that is being able to map your infrastructure through to your services, essentially, and that's an amazing piece of technology that we have in Vader. So if you do have people within your organization who are now sort of focusing on ITSM, and say ServiceNow in particular, there is hopefully a lot relevant from SCOM and Squared Up that we can show you, and you can kind of show your business. So it's got a great opportunity, actually. So rather than feeling perhaps there's some momentum with another part of your organization, this is a great opportunity to, I think, revive the investment in SCOM that you've made. The fact that you've got SCOM agents installed on every single one of your boxes is a massive asset, and will be demonstrating to your organization what you can do with that from a service management point of view as well. So we were out meeting sort of ServiceNow customers at Knowledge, but you'll sort of hear more about that in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, I know you were saying, Richard, you were quite enjoying showing off Vader to some people who've been working with various different other mapping tools, and they're looking at it going, "Wow, this is so cool. We spent so much money on another tool."
Yeah, it just comes back to this premise, which is where Squared Up started, which is SCOM is an amazing platform and an amazing amount of data that's been sort of collected by organizations, and there is just so much more value still in that. So despite the future around sort of monitoring tools being unclear, like which direction you're going right now, the investment in SCOM is significant, and there it's still highly relevant to everything that IT organizations are facing. So our mission still is to unlock that value and kind of make sure that investment in getting the SCOM agents on every single box, collecting all of that data, investing now in your application models as well, will translate to value that your organization will see over the next 5 years.
Yep. If you take Vader to someone in your organization who's about to spend a 6-figure sum on some mapping tool, and show them that,
absolutely,
you'll be the hero. So definitely go and have a look at doing that. And I've also got some upcoming events that we're going to. Yeah,
so Ignite obviously is the big one for all of us in terms of announcements around the Microsoft platform. We're not expecting to see too much around SCOM. They've now got this sort of semi-annual release cadence, which is great. So I guess there'll be some updates from that point of view. As well as updates around the Azure story. As I say, I think from our point of view, that will be a big one from a Honolulu perspective.
Yes.
So Windows Server 2019, which I think it's the public roadmap there shows that is due out second half of this year. So Windows Server 2019 with this brand new administration experience, I think there'll be a lot of talk around that, and that will generate a bit more buzz. What is really nice to see, if you have seen a slide deck or sort of Microsoft talking about Honolulu or Windows Admin Center, what is really nice to see is that in that deck, they specifically position it complementary to System Center, right? So that's still very much from an on-prem data center management point of view, System Center is still very much front of mind for them. And they also then have OMS, which from a sort of a licensing bundle is still sort of very much their strategy. So hopefully there'll be more talk of System Center in sort of comparison with Windows Admin Center. And again, we're plugged into both, so that'd be exciting to see. So I guess we'll all be looking forward to Microsoft Ignite later this year.
So we're also going to Experts Live in Europe in October.
Yeah, that's a great one. So that's been in Berlin over the last few years. That is a really, I think, exciting conference that still sort of embodies that great kind of community aspect to these conferences. So if you are in Europe, that is a great one to get to. It started life as System Center Universe, so it's still got a sort of System Center slant to it, but obviously now it's embracing the kind of broader cloud and data center management space, so across sort of Azure and Windows Server and PowerShell. You often see a kind of lot of talk around sort of PowerShell there as well. So drop us a line if you're heading to that, or indeed sort of going to be speaking at that perhaps, but that'll be a great event and we'll have a good presence there.
Absolutely. I guess with all three conferences, we're going to WinOps as well in London in November, so that basically the sort of final quarter of this year, if you want to come and talk to us and tell us your woes and see cool stuff, because we often show off things at conferences that we don't normally show to customers, definitely come and find us. We'll have a presence at all three of those of all 3 of those events, and
We'll have a lot to show.
yeah, we absolutely will. So come along to those. You'll get great sort of experience, not just from us, but from other people as well. There's always something for you at one of these 3 conferences, if not all 3.
And if there's a conference that's on your radar for the rest of the year that we're not attending as far as let us know. Obviously, the sort of conference landscape sort of shifts all the time. Microsoft Ignite now is much more sort of high level. There's no Microsoft Management Summit anymore. So if there's sort of more kind of local events that you're going to attend, or you're planning to make your big trip this year to a particular conference, let us know. And if we sort of hear that a number of times, then we'll sort of look to make a trip ourselves. So yeah, do drop us a line if there are other conferences on your radar.
Yeah, we've got some developers who are very keen to earn air miles in this company, so I'm sure they'll be up for it. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start wrapping up the episode. So a bit of a short one this month, but I just wanted to sort of touch on the fact we are working on the next sort of major version pretty heavily now. So there's some pretty cool stuff to come out there. If you haven't seen the sneak peek that I did last month on availability monitoring, go and have a look at that in our Coffee Break channel. Speaking of which, a couple of resource links for you here, and then we'll close the webinar out. So as I mentioned, we're very focused on sort of hybrid cloud and trying to understand where so the monitoring landscape is currently sort of falling in terms of cloud adoption. So if you go to squareup.com/hybrid, there's a 10-question survey there. Shouldn't take you very long at all. Where you can basically tell us anonymously how your organization's doing. What are your plans with respect to cloud adoption? If you've got them, how far through those are, and what sort of your goals with that in mind are, and what your kind of needs are too. So that'd be really, really helpful to us to make sure that we're building the right tooling and trying to sort of build up the right experiences and integrations and advice to give people on what you should actually be doing. Because as Richard was saying, it's not about the single tool anymore. It's about your strategy now and sort of what you can leverage with the various different options and pressures that you're being given. If you want to see what's coming up next and register for the coffee breaks, or if you've got a colleague who you think, they really like this stuff, you go to squareup.com/coffee break series, where you can then sign up with a GoToMeeting and registrar link and get sent this information. The recordings and slides are published via our blog, along with a whole bunch of other good stuff. So if you want the links that I showed off previously for the MP Uni link, or you missed the webinar registration for Windows Admin Center, those will be in the slide deck on our blog tomorrow, along with a whole bunch of other good content. So definitely worth checking out our blog if you haven't seen it before. We've name dropped a couple of different coffee breaks. We've done loads of these now. This is the 41st coffee break we've done. So there's plenty on there on our YouTube channel, where you can go and find all of those ranging from content around SCOM specifically, and SCOM and Squared Up, and just the monitoring landscape in general, and other cool integrations and customer case studies. And there is definitely something there for everyone. So if you haven't seen it before, this is your first time coming across Squared Up, please go and check that out. I guarantee you it will be useful stuff. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming along to the webinar. As always, our technical team are online, along with myself and Richard, who I think has got a question for us from someone.
Well, I was just going to bring this up, seeing as we're in the Q&A section, to make the chat extend. Drop off if you've sort of have come to the end of your sort of time slot here and need to get on to other things. But just something came up on the chat window. I'm not sure actually what the context was, but sort of Mike here was just sort of mentioning around the Linux monitoring being really significant in his environment, sort of 50-50 sort of Windows, Linux, and I'm not sure what sort of the context was, whether it was events or coffee break or Microsoft, but I want to see sort of more Linux monitoring. But I think it is something that comes up again and again. We all know that SCOM is primarily sort of Microsoft focused and Windows Server focused, but we also, from our point of view, we generally see a 70-30 split. It's rare that a customer will say, well, no, it's just Microsoft that we're monitoring with SCOM. So it's a 30% Linux, 50% obviously as well, is not that unusual.
No.
Yet there still aren't that many sort of resources around it. It's a really great story now. Microsoft have really invested in Linux monitoring over the last couple of releases. Squared Up, we generally see some really great success stories with putting Squared Up as a front end on top of SCOM, because you don't have to run the SCOM console on your local machine and so on. And it doesn't say Microsoft anywhere when you log on to Squared Up. And we see that as a real success story, putting Squared Up out to Linux server admins using SCOM. So yeah, maybe that's something that we can take on ourselves, Matthew, in a coffee break. So just do a bit more around what are the resources available out there, what are the tips and tricks, and how do you make the most of centralizing your monitoring across Windows and Linux on SCOM. I
mean, that's something that Microsoft seem to be starting to recognize, but they're doing that sort of quite slowly. Like 1801 had improvements to the Linux agent built in there. And even actually in terms of our customers, the case study we have on our YouTube channel with Sean from Purdue University, all their apps are 100% Linux servers, right? So that's a success story there of we are monitoring all of our key apps and they're all 100% Linux. And we're still using SCOM to do that. But it's the appetite to have it. And I think actually with really the piece that's missing is SCOM is only as powerful as its management packs ultimately. And that's kind of the issue actually, that not many vendors have really picked that challenge up as had to produce management packs for Linux applications. So I think that's probably where maybe going and looking at the MP University stuff or trying to look at various different cross-plat initiatives that have been out there might help you with that. I mean, the other great thing is that Linux teams generally, they're very pro-scripting. And SCOM ultimately can just run scripts if you want it to. So there's definitely an avenue there. If you actually engage with these teams, you'll probably find that they've got what you need to be able to monitor it in SCOM fairly successfully. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. We'll take that on board and look at doing coffee breaks in the future.
We have to
on
get
that topic.
Christian from NICE. So our partner's NICE, who best known for probably developing the Oracle management pack. Christian Heidkamp there, who sort of leads the dev side of that. Very passionate about Linux monitoring with SCOM and has plenty of information to share about it.
He is super proud of his test environment, isn't he? It has like every single flavor and variant of Unix and Linux that SCOM supports. So we'll definitely get them on again. I think they've got some cool stuff to show off as of late.
And another sort of comment from Brett earlier on around Honolulu, just sort of one of the barriers for adoption, of course, is that Honolulu connects out to every single server it manages, which is different to SCOM. So SCOM, you invest in putting the agent on that box, and then SCOM does all of the communication and the rest of it. Whereas with Honolulu, essentially every server you want to manage via Honolulu has to be appropriately configured for Honolulu to be able to kind of connect to it from the outside in. One challenge that sort of Brett mentioned there is the requirement for PowerShell and the WMF, Windows Management Framework, to be installed.
Probably version 3 or 4 at least.
So sort of that is a question that probably works well in smaller silos where those servers are sort of well managed by their owners anyway, whereas kind of rolling this out across the entire organization has the sort of sound of a challenge to it.
It's like with SCOM, isn't it? Like, the reason it works is because you've already went through the pain of putting agents everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is another one. I think that's probably why Microsoft are focusing on 2019 being the launch. The idea is start fresh. This is how you're going to manage your 2019 environment because you can ensure for those servers that they meet the prereqs and they're configured properly. And like you say, if you're older ones, you kind of pretend they don't exist for a while or try and migrate off of them.
All right, there you go.
Cool. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Any other questions? Feel free to post those in the chat. If not, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Richard.
Cheers.
Have a great day, guys.